Now, we could do several lessons on this next topic, but I need to get into a little bit of this briefly, just so we've got a stage that has been set for the lessons coming up. So, we're going to talk a little bit about encryption. Now, encryption is a really big topic, but let me just go over it using my web browser here as an example. Now, you can see this green lock here. This gives me information about the encryption that's in place. So if I click the lock indicates that we're encrypted because Google uses encrypted connections all over the place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the certificate information here, and I'm going to get details about the certificate. Now, a certificate is really a data structure that stores information about not only the identity of the server that we're communicating with, but also the keys that are in use, as well as some additional protocols. Now, we've got a key that is a public key here, and that public key is actually used to encrypt information that is being sent to the server. I would use this public key if I wanted to encrypt something that I was going to send to Google. This is called asymmetric encryption, or sometimes it's called public key cryptography. Now, the reason it's called public key is because we have a public key and we have a private key. If I encrypt something with the public key, it can only be decrypted with the matching private key, and that private key, in this particular case, is stored with Google's web server, www.google.com. So this is asymmetric cryptography. Now, the other type of cryptography is actually symmetric cryptography, which means we both have the same key. Asymmetric means there's a different key on either end of the conversation. Symmetric key means there's the same key. So what we're going to do in most common usage here is we're going to use the asymmetric key in order to pass a symmetric key from one side to the other. And this is called hybrid cryptography. And the reason that we do this is because we use really big keys with it. It's very computationally intensive, which means it can slow the process down. Symmetric key, using protocols like AES, for example, which we will get into a little bit later on, is the case where we've got the same key on both ends of the equation. So we want to use something where we know the key ahead of time, like the public key, in order to exchange a session key, which is going to be used for the duration of my conversation with Google, and then we're just going to dispose of it once we're all done. So I encrypt my messages to Google using the public key. We exchange the session key that is going to be used while we're communicating. And that's what's actually going to be used to encrypt and decrypt the communication between me and the Google web server. Now, when we're talking about wireless communications, we use encryption. And there are a number of ways of doing that. And we'll get into some of them over the next few lessons. We've got WEP, WPA, WPA2. We've got 3 different types of encryption, which use 3 different mechanisms in order to actually perform the encryption back and forth. But encryption is really the process of making messages from one side of a conversation to the other side impossible for anybody in the middle to actually read. So we do that using keys that are used with encryption ciphers to encrypt the messages.